to say, Nick, I do love Sussex by the Sea, played so beautifully by the Princess's regiment, but 6 times in a row is a bit pushing it, ladies and gentlemen. Anyway, there we are. A great sound to greet Ray today. And can I begin by just saying on behalf of Nick, of course, a very big thank you to the friends here today. I think we've got Graham and Tim here. Hi, Tim. And is it Veronica? No, Veronica? Victoria and that's right, I know Isaac, of course. Anyway, it's Christine, isn't it, as well? Well, thank you very much on behalf of Nick and, of course, all the family, to you friends, for being here today. And I'm sure Nick would wish me to say publicly thanks to for all the messages of love and support, which no doubt have come your way in the recent days since Dad's passing.
Maybe 200.
Is it 200? Yeah. Really?
Yeah.
And that's something to treasure, isn't it, of course? And quite naturally for you, Nick, in particular, this is a defining moment, as it is, I'm sure, for Isaac as well, and all the family, having to say goodbye to someone who's been part of your lives for so long. And when you think about it, Nick, Dad having been born, as we know, back in 1927, ladies and gentlemen, and in that year it was a time when not all women had the vote in 1927. And although I didn't have the honour of knowing Ray myself, I'm told by Nick he was a true gentleman. Again, all of you who knew him will know how true this is. He was old school with impeccable manners, and his style and his values very much shaped, I assume, Nick, by the generation into which he was born, and of course the discipline he would have gone through during his time spent in national service. So today is a day to look back, I suppose, with gratitude, most certainly, and great pride, as you remember, Ray, all that he gave during his lifetime, and indeed what he meant to you all during your own life's journey. And I'd just like to formally pass on from friends here, Nick, and those who can't be here, all kindest best wishes to you and your family, of course. I'd like also, if I may, to mention Cindy today, if I may, who remained best of friends with Ray, as you all know, ladies and gentlemen, even after they went their own ways later in life. As I said, we've had music especially chosen for Ray, obviously that delightfully jaunty rendition of Sussex by the Sea as we came in. And of course, he was, as you know, with the Sussex Regiment during his time in national service. And we'll also be hearing from Captain Sir Tom Moore, with a little help from Michael Ball, as we leave here today to lay Ray to rest in the grounds of this very, very beautiful place. But first from me, as told to me by Nick, some memories and the story of Ray's life, born as he was, as I said, an only child actually, on October the 29th, 1927, to Annie and Harold in Ashford in Kent. His dad, Harold, was a farm worker who I believe was stone deaf, you told me, Nick, didn't you? And the only time he heard something apparently was when a wartime bomb went off near the family home. He'd become deaf having been involved in an accident hit by a car back in the early 50s. Ray's birth here was an interesting one. It was the year 1927 that the first ever transatlantic phone call was made to America, New York, and the BBC was established under the chairmanship of Lord Reith. Of course, in 1927, there was no television, and those reading the news on the wireless, directed by Lord Reith, had to wear dinner jackets, even though, of course, no one could see them. And Ray shares his birth year with a few well-known names, also born in 1927, the Beverley sisters, of course, the war years, Sir Roger Moore, and wait for it, Danny LaRue. I don't know how Dad would have felt about sharing his birth year with Danny LaRue, but there we are. He did he? Oh, that's all right. Well, of course, he was very much an entertainer, wasn't he, of that period when Dad was around. When he was about 4 or 5, the family moved from Ashford to Burwash, probably, I'd imagine, connected with his dad's work. And Ray remembered his mum and dad had a tandem bike, pedalling off on their tandem with little Ray wedged between them. Every Saturday, of course, there were the trips to the cinema in Heathfield, and for people of that generation, wherever you lived, that was quite a common pastime, cinemas on Saturdays. And the screen stars he saw included George Formby, particularly, which I understand Dad remembered Nick. And of course, when Ray was 10, the magic of Disney's Snow White cast its spell over wide-eyed young cinema goers, having just been released in 1937. Now, Ray went to Burwash Village School, and he was 12 when the war broke out. And at that time, the family was living in a cottage between Ticehurst and Wadhurst. And I'm sure Nick will correct me if any of these little details are slightly incorrect. Now, an interesting story here, ladies and gentlemen, because normally people were evacuated from the south and out of the cities. But on this occasion, because they were in a rural area, there was no evacuation out of the Ticehurst-Wadhurst area. But a couple of young girls were actually evacuated from London to stay with Ray's family for the duration of the war. And some years later, he wrote letters to a London newspaper in an attempt to trace them. One of them saw the letter and responded, and contact was also made with the other evacuee, and a happy reunion followed. And I believe it was contact, Sue, Nick, that was kept for a very, very long time, for the duration of Dad's life. Now, Ray stayed at Burwash, and at 15 he got his first job on his rounds for the village bakers. And Nick here has in his possession a reference written for his dad from the said bakers that he'd worked for as a teenager, Waterhouse Bakers, I believe. And it notes, and I quote, ladies and gentlemen, that young Ray had been an employee for 9 months in 1944. He was honest and capable, it said, and the reference also refers to his work and his successful efforts at the local football league. But of course, national service beckoned, and as I mentioned, he joined the Sussex Regiment and was posted out to Egypt during the Suez-Palestine crisis in the 50s. And at one point during national service, he had a spell in Gibraltar. And I'm told that the Barbary apes that were residents of Gibraltar, of course, still are, I believe, had escaped and went on a bit of a rampage, and Ray and the soldiers found themselves chasing the apes in an effort to recapture them and secure them, of course. Now, when the Suez crisis was over, which was a big, big thing in British history at the time, Ray found himself in the presence of royalty, tasked with helping to plan a route to get the disposed King Farouk out of Egypt. And this was June 1953, part of a convoy to drive the king away. Apparently, the king was very amused when, at the king's own request, Ray sang a funny rhyme about the king himself. And apparently it went down very well, and he carried a few favours there, didn't he, Nick? Now, Ray stayed in the army way beyond his 2 years compulsory period of service. And it was after 9 years that he returned to Civvy Street and went to work at a private asylum, Ticehurst House, looking after people who were unstable, shall we say. And a couple of the residents there were members of the Bowes-Lyons family, the Queen Mother's family. And in fact, I know for years as a journalist that the press for years and years have been trying to dig out the whereabouts and the scandal surrounding some of the Queen Mum's aunts who were hidden away, apparently. And Ray's job was to escort these people around and keep them actually out of the way, I'm told. Now, he'd always been keen on football, as we can see from that marvellous coffin there and the floral decoration on the top. And he progressed to become a county league referee. He was in action. He was in action on the field. I think you said, Nick, Wadhurst Toc H.
That was a club that was started by my granddad on my mum's side. And
that's Cindy's dad.
That's right, yeah.
And it was at that point that Dad and Cindy got to know each other, ladies and gentlemen. And according to Nick, Dad made her laugh a lot, which was one of the things that she found very, very attractive in him. Needless to say, their friendship developed, and after 10 years, they married on March the 12th, 1966. World Cup year, appropriately enough, might I say, Nick, marrying in Wadhurst Church. They lived with Cindy's parents and then a tied home owned by Ticehurst House, it's correct, isn't it? Nick being born in 1969. Ray was still chauffeuring at that time and then went on to work as a mechanic at a local garage. He continued pursuing his love of football and was a Hastings United season ticket holder for 30 to 40 years. His next career move was that as a rep selling children's books, and I understand Nick still has got some of the Mr. Men books originals signed by the author. And Dad was bringing home a new book quite regularly for his son, wasn't he, Nick, for you to see? I'd imagine they're quite treasured possessions now.
Yes, they're working their way towards the ways.
They are.
Yeah.
You've got some good reading to look forward to. They're nice. Anyway, he kept working till the 1980s when the company he was working for was then bought out, and Ray then went on to work in various hospitals as a porter. He certainly was he certainly was a grafter, wasn't he, all his life? You know, he always found something to do non-stop. And of course it was in 1992 that he retired. And then, Nick, you were running the cinema in Bexhill, and Dad took great delight in handling all the tickets for the children.
That's all the pictures he was there.
Yeah, was it all cartoons?
One down.
Was it? Was it cartoons and things?
All
in the
that
mix?
stuff, the old series
Yeah.
and stuff. But yeah, that's his after retirement thing. He loved that.
Yeah.
Very much.
I'd imagine also it brought back memories of the time as a little boy he was going to the cinema on Saturdays as well, all those years ago. Did he keep doing that for very long, working at your cinema?
I went to cinema for just under 4 years. Yeah, he was still there right at the end. Yeah.
Right. This was in Weston Road, I believe, was it? That's right.
Yeah.
Now, Ray had moved to Hastings in 1974 to look after his mum. Unfortunately, his mum passed away the very day that they moved into Dudley Road. And after Cindy and Ray divorced, went their own ways in 1983, remaining good friends, as I said, he continued to live in Dudley Road and then moved on to Girth Road. During his retirement years, again, you, his friends, I'm sure will know this of Ray, he very much enjoyed socialising and reminiscing, no doubt, with some friends of his own age, and he always enjoyed his garden as well. That was another great pleasure in his life. He was able to live with great contentment, wasn't he, Nick, and a true sense of fulfilment for 20 years in Girth Road until he passed away. I'm sure that you've all got so many different memories. It always seems so unfair, ladies and gentlemen. We had just sort of half an hour, really, to tell the story of such a long life, of course. But any of the friends, Tim, Graham, got any little thoughts or memories as you sit there? Yes, please, Sue.
Just the way he used to come and say, hello, Ray. It's just the way he had a unique way of saying hello. Do you agree, Christine? Yeah.
But what I would like to add,
Yeah, please.
some people know this, but just as you know, Jonathan, just below his house in Girth Road, and for that matter, there used to be a pub called the Belmont.
The Belmont, yes.
Now, it's often split up with Victoria, and I said, yeah, it was still open, and I was just going to get down and have a bit of pint. Anyway, he said, oh, go. And he had this going out suit, just for the garden and everything, but he put on his going out suit. This is somebody that claimed they never went out at all, and never. Anyway, so we popped in, I said, oh, and everyone was going, hello, Ray, how are you? And not only that, this is his secret social life. He even had his own mug behind the bar.
Oh, really?
So he did have a secret tipple down the Belmont as well.
Right, okay.
That's quite nice, the fact that he never went out, but he had his mug with him.
Yes.
Yeah. Usual run, yeah.
Nice memories.
Yeah.
You've got good memories, Isaac, of Grandad?
Yeah,
Was he good fun to be with?
he was. He was very, he was very unique, definitely.
Right.
Yeah, I remember he always used to say hello in a very, as Susan said, he used to say hello in a very...
Hello!
That's it.
Right, oh, I see. He used to have a little light-hearted delivery, did he?
Yeah. He'd always been very, even when he was stuck at home, he'd always been very,
Jovial.
like still lively.
Yeah, upbeat and jovial, yes.
Yeah, he'd always been like that.
we were lucky, Jonathan, even with the dementia. He actually, I know a lot of people, basically family members, suffer because the person with dementia doesn't remember them. We were so lucky he actually remembered Isaac, remembered me, and fortunately, we were lucky that way.
Yeah. And Christine, Tim and Graham, all nice.
He used to, when I go to see Ray, he always give me a Mars bar.
A Mars bar?
Yeah, and
That you have to leave.
yeah,
You
yeah,
always have
and
to
he
serve
always
that.
has a Mars bar for me every time I want to go and see him. I think I was little that time, wasn't I?
Yeah.
Yeah, and
Very
I just always have good memories of Ray.
Yeah, nice one. Lovely memories.
And a lovely story, when we bashes he went to, they used to get sort of famous speakers for the annual conference. There's a lovely story of my father not being the greatest person at foxtrotting or tango, what on earth they were doing, but he somehow successfully managed to, trying to think of her name now, what's the name of the actress that played Sybil Fawcett?
Oh, Prunella Scales.
Thank you. He managed to ladder Prunella Scales' tights.
Oh, really?
Well, he was in dancing with her. It's like, there you go.
Well, there's a story to be told, isn't there? How that came about. I'm sure she was very forgiving, unless she was very much like Sybil Fawlty, which she wouldn't have been forgiving at all, would she? What a great memory, what a great thought. Lovely memories for you as well, Tor, I hope, when you look back.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
He was always quick to lend a hand in the garden. He dug out most of our garden, and I always remember how happy he was in his garden, apart from when people were stealing his cucumbers.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah. The pup, they used to come in and steal his cucumbers, and he went on cucumber watch.
Yeah.
Oh, really?
I've watched Cucumber Watch, yeah.
Did he ever catch anyone? That's got to be the next question.
I don't know.
Don't
I
know.
actually don't know.
To see your dad chasing someone down the road with a large cucumber weighing away his hand, waiting for something. Well, some lovely memories, of course, and how can we do justice to someone after such a long life? And bearing in mind his love of nature and his love of his garden, the music we've chosen today, just to listen to while we sit here. You're not going to be asked to sing along, don't worry, ladies and gentlemen, but it is the old chestnut, the old evergreen, All Things Bright and Beautiful, and it's being sung by the Huddersfield Choral Society, which is a brilliant choral society. And I invite you, as I say, to think about Ray and all the good times, as I'm sure he would wish, of course, as we listen to, indeed, All Things Bright and Beautiful.
All things bright and beautiful, all creatures great and small, all things wise and wonderful, the Lord God made them all. Each little flower that opens, each little bird that sings, He made the glowing colours, He made the tiny wings.
B&B, isn't it? And I suppose Ray, like most of us of a certain generation, I don't know about Isaac's generation, but we would have had to sung that at school assemblies over the years, and I suppose that Ray must have belted that one out a few times as well. All things bright and beautiful. Before I ask you to say with me the words of the Lord's Prayer, ladies and gentlemen, there is just one little reading that I found, which I think is very suitable for this occasion, when we look back on anyone's life. It's not how did he die, but how did he live. Not what did he gain, but what did he give. And these are the things that measure the worth of a man as a man, regardless of birth. Not what was his station, but had he a heart? And how did he play his God-given part? Was he ever ready with a word of good cheer to bring back a smile or to banish a tear? Not what was his church, not what was his creed, but had he befriended those really in need? And not what did the sketch in the newspaper say, but how many were sorry when he passed away. And these are the things that measure the worth of a man as a man, regardless of birth. So if you'd like to say with me the words of the Lord's Prayer then, ladies and gentlemen. Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power and the glory, for ever and ever. Amen. Just before we leave here to go graveside, may I thank you, Nick, and all the family, Victoria, Isaac, and all friends. Thank you so much for asking me and for being here, of course, today but not at all. If just to say about graveside, I know most of you arrived, I believe, in one limousine, the majority of you. But those of you who are going down to graveside, it's just to say that it's not walking distance. Okay, so what we're going to do is the hearse will pull up at the car park, and those of you who are in a car, giving you time to get in the car and just follow down behind us. Try not to get in front because there's so many little crisscrosses, you know, you get lost, sort of thing. And there we are. And once again, thank you very much indeed. Before we do leave here, just to reflect, as I always do when someone's led a very long life, as to what Ray has seen as the world has evolved into an astonishing place, a world unrecognisable to the generation of his own mum and dad. And I think Isaac, as a young generation, would be interesting to know about Grandad's years, what was there and what wasn't. Because when he was born, there was no television, no welfare state, no washing machines or fridges. The workhouses actually still existed in England until 1948. The last one closed. Many people's houses had outside loos, and wait for this one, soft toilet paper was 30 years away from 1927. So he's survived a war, seen the founding of the NHS, 14 prime ministers have been and gone. His life has touched the reign of 4 monarchs, rock and roll 50s, swinging 60s, man on the moon, the World Wide Web, and he's even made it into a second millennium, of course. I think it's fair to say, with all that, with all his witness and all that he's seen, whatever you believe in or don't believe in, ladies and gentlemen, Ray most certainly has earned the right to rest in peace. And so we leave here now to take Ray, to lay him down, as I say, in the grounds of this beautiful place. And what else? A song, his generation, of course, reflected by Captain Tom Moore in recent years, of course. A man great, the country held in great pride, of course, as we listen to Captain Tom Moore and Michael Ball, and of course, You'll Never Walk Alone, as we leave here now.
When you walk through a storm, hold your head up high, and don't be afraid of the dark. At the end of the storm, there's a golden sky, and sweet silver song of the lark.
When you walk through a storm, hold your head up high and don't be afraid
Would you care to
of the
stand?
dark.
At the end of the storm, there's a golden sky and a sweet silver song of the lark.
Walk on through the wind, walk on through the rain, though your dreams be tossed and blown. Walk on, walk on with hope in your heart, and you'll never walk alone. You'll never walk alone.
Walk on with hope in your heart, and you'll never walk alone. You'll never walk alone.
When you walk through a storm, hold your head up high and don't be afraid of the dark.
At the end of the storm, there's a golden sky and the sweet silver song of the lark.
Walk on
Walk
through the
on
wind.